These are the top 10 best metal albums of March 2023. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video because I will be mentioning a few non-metal albums that I recommend if you are a rock and metal fan. So in this list, I actually have 2 comedy metal albums. I have some power metal, some symphonic metal, a few classic heavy metal albums, some progressive metal, and some black metal. I also noticed that I have 3 albums that were released on March 31st, which was the reason why I waited until now to make this list, because last weekend was actually pretty good. But I also have 11 albums. I said top 10 because it's YouTube and the algorithm, you know how it is. So let's get right into it. At number 11, I have Dislike to False Metal by Nanowar of Steel. They are an Italian power metal band. They make parodies of other bands. At first I thought it was kind of cheesy, but once you listen to it a few times, I think the songs are very catchy. I think you can kind of get into them. We have some fun songs. They have Sober. It's a parody of those pirate drinking songs like Ailstorm, but they're talking about being sober. I really liked Pasadena in 1994, which was a parody of Sabaton, where they usually like sing about war, but they're singing about the World Cup. I think the one song I didn't like was Chupacabra, Chupacabra Cadabra. It was like Mexican music. That one I think didn't work, but overall, good enough to make number 11. At number 10, I have Camelot with The Awakening. This is a power metal band. This one it took me a while to get into. This one almost didn't make my list, but after a few listens, I got into it. I think the key with this album is that the songs are just very melodic and they're very catchy. Like those choruses that stick in your head. Probably my favorite songs, Midsummer's Eve, that was more of like a ballad with piano and orchestration. And One More Flag in the Ground, a little more epic with the Middle Eastern sounds in the chorus. So I think this is an album, for me at least, it took a little while to get into it. But that's why it comes in at number 10. And at number 9, I have Night Demon with Outsider. And this is just classic heavy metal. A throwback to the early 80s. Bands like Angel Witch, Witchfinders General, just Dio, those kind of like Judas Priest, those are early like 80s bands. I like this one a lot. I like Escape from Beyond. That was kind of like a throwback to 80s heavy metal. Another good song, Awake, was a power ballad similar to Beyond the Realms of Death by Judas Priest. And number 8 is a surprise for me because at first I thought this was super cheesy, but it's Lordi with Screamwriters Guild. It's another comedy metal band. They play like power metal in the style of like Powerwolf, but it's super campy. I really like this type of music when it's like that horror music where it's like Kiss and Alice Cooper. Those are 2 of my favorite bands, and this is just very campy, like old horror movies. So that's kind of like what I like. My favorite songs are Thing in a Cage. That one just super catchy. That was a single. Scarecrow. That one pretty cool. A little more like laid back. The skits with the SCG Awards. I think there was one part where that was really made me laugh with the Dyslexicist. It was an album that I didn't think was great at first, but it just it just made me laugh. And the songs are catchy. That's why it's on this list. At number 7, I have Ad Infinitum with Chapter 3 Downfall. Another one that didn't blow me away at first, but after a few listens, I really got into it. A symphonic metal band led by vocalist Melissa Bonney. She was actually on the Camelot album, I forgot to mention. But she has a full album here with her band. I really like Somewhere Better. Super catchy, super melodic song. I like Underworld because that kind of shows like the heavier side. This is a mix of symphonic metal, but with hints of that heavy, almost like Meshuggah style, like gentle, that type of metal. At number 6 is Call of the North by Frozen Crown, another power metal band with a female vocalist. But this one, another one, I thought it was okay at first, but it's one of those power metal bands where they kind of get like a little heavier. They have heavier guitar riffs, and I think that's why this one is up a little higher for me. I like a lot of the songs. I like Victorious, that's kind of more the stripped down ballads. They have Legion, there's great heavy metal guitar riffs. Overall, it's a good album. If you like the fantasy-based lyrics and that type of power metal, definitely a good album to check out. At number 5 is Haken with Fauna. This is a concept album. It's basically about the animal kingdom, but they're using animals as metaphors for different things they want to express. This one I liked a lot, but I think there were a few songs that I think I didn't like. The one song I didn't like was the single Alphabetical Me, inspired by Blade Runner. I think that was too much of a modern pop song, but the rest of the album really made up for it. I like Nightingale, that kind of sounds like modern Radiohead. Temperamental Beings, that's another one, more like those electronic sounds, very like progressive rock, progressive metal, that one's that one's really good. And then The White Rainbow, more of those heavier, like gent, Meshuggah style like guitar riffs. Love Bites, about Black Widows, that one was pretty cool. It's like jazzy, a little poppy. Pretty much a very strong album. I think other than the one song Alphabetical Me, which I didn't like that much, I think this one was strong enough to make this list. And now we have four more left, which is, there are some surprises in here because there's one album which I didn't think was going to make this list at all, but it's actually up to number 3. And with the top 2, I have one that I thought was going to be number 1, and my number 1 was kind of like a latecomer. Let's get into it with number 4, and that's Narnia with Ghost Town. This is a power metal band, a Christian metal band. They sing about Christianity and Chronicles of Narnia. That's like their biggest influence. They've kind of gone through some stylistic changes. They used to be more of like a they used to be more of like a power metal band, but I think now they're more like traditional heavy metal and melodic metal. I think they're kind of going in that same direction that like Stryper is going in, where their modern stuff is a new direction. They're sounding a little more heavier. The songs are very good. Lots of great songs. I like Glory Days, just a hard rocker. That's kind of like a modern Stryper sound. Ghost Town, that's more of a melodic rock song. Modern Day Pharisees, that one I like a lot. It's very more like progressive, more like a Dream Theater type of sound. They mix in some keyboards, heavy guitars. At number 3, I have the big surprise, Baby Metal with the other one. When I first heard of this band, I never wanted to listen to them. I thought they were a gimmick. It just reminded me of that music that you hear on like that Dance Dance Revolution game. I never got into this band, but this was an album. It took me a few listens to really get into it, and it's a solid album all the way through. All the tracks are like really good. They're just mixing all different types of styles, and they have that unique singing style, which is part of like the whole Japanese metal, and I think it's called like kawaii metal. But all the songs are great. Mirror Mirror, just lots of like technical, progressive guitar riffs. I mean, these girls, the young girls who are in the band, and they can like really play. They are very talented musicians. Other good songs I like, Maya, that one was good. Metalism, Time Wave, The Legend, I like that one. It was a little more atmospheric, more electronic and pop oriented, but all of this is just heavy music. It's just a really good album. If you've never listened to Baby Metal, just give them a chance. They might take a few listens to kind of get into them, but their music is just really good. At number 2 is Enslaved with Heimdall. This was actually the one that I thought was going to be my number 1. It's black metal. I'm not a big black metal guy, but I think when you take black metal and you mix it with something else, in this case, it's progressive rock, progressive metal. It's just really good music. I think for me, like the one track that I've been listening to the most is Congelia. And that's like the most like old school, the straightforward black metal song, which is kind of surprising for me. But the reason I listen to it is because I have this like workout mix on my YouTube Music. And this song always came up. So every time I like go on my stationary bike, Congelia would be like the first song to play. So I've probably listened to it almost every day for like the past week or so. That one I like, but I also love Forest Dweller. This one is really great. Reminds me of Opeth, and actually reminds me of The Doors with Jim Morrison. There's one part where it reminds me of his singing. That one I like a lot. Everything else is just great. Kingdom, The Eternal Sea, Caravans of the Outer Worlds. And I know many long-time Enslaved fans say this is not their best album. I've listened to their discography like each album once. It's definitely a band I need to go back to and check out their other albums and listen to them some more. Because it's just one of the few black metal bands that actually I am interested in right now. This is definitely worth it for number 2. And my surprise for number one is Last in Line with Jericho. This is a band consisting of former members of Dio, Vivian Campbell, Vinny Appice, and then two other members, Phil Southman, who played with Ozzy, and Andrew Freeman, the vocalist for Lynch Mob. What I like about this album is that it sounds like an album that came out in the late 80s, that classic heavy metal sound. And it just has that throwback sound. It's kind of like a concept album. They're talking about the Bible story of Jericho, and just every song, one after the other, is just a really great song. So everything from Not Today Satan, the opening track, Ghost Town, Bastard Son, that one I like a lot. It's more like modern Alice in Chains. Dark Days, Burning Bridges, that's a ballad, and just the rest of the album. So I definitely recommend this album if you're a fan of that 80s heavy metal, that classic metal. This is just a lot better than that Night Demon album that was a throwback, but this is more of, I guess it's kind of like a legacy band, but obviously Ronnie James Dio passed away in 2009, I believe. These are the same, most of the same members, so they're recreating that type of music. That's why I like it. And now these are the honorable mentions or non-metal albums that I recommend if you are a metalhead, or if you're like this classic rock. My first one is Floor Jansen with Paragon. This is not a metal album. We know she's the vocalist of Nightwish. This doesn't sound anything like Nightwish. There might be like hints of that symphonic music and very underlying, but it's more like pop metal. But I thought this was a really strong album, and just the music is very good. Next, Depeche Mode with Memento Mori. This is not on my list because it's not a metal album, but I think this might be like my album of the month. This is probably a really great album. They're bringing back that 80s sound. This is just one of those bands. They're not metal, but they play that like symphonic, like synth pop, and it can get dark and goth and gloomy. And I think if you're a metalhead, you can definitely enjoy this album. I did a full review. You can find it on my channel, but definitely, if you like rock and metal, check out Depeche Mode. I think that might be one of those bands that you might like. And the other one, Molina Talbot, Lofgren Young. That's kind of like the guys from Neil Young, Crazy Horse. This is more laid back, but I think there are some songs that have some grungy elements. It's definitely worth a listen. You might like it, you might not like it, but I'm just going to give it a mention. And the last one I'm going to mention is The Answer with Sundowners. The type of band that's, I'd say like the Rolling Stones, the Black Crowes, that type of heavy blues rock, but they kind of turn it up a notch. They turn up the distortion a little bit. They're more of a hard rock band. I had their debut on CD, but definitely check out this new album. It's just a very solid album. So that is all. Thanks for watching. Check out some of the other videos on my channel. And please remember, like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.